managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more.
Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP.
Customers want fast and frictionless digital experiences, yet also expect protection against breaches, privacy violations, and fraud. Drive engagement by optimizing security and convenience to attract and retain customers. Use the PingOne cloud platform to build, test, and optimize digital experiences. The no-code orchestration engine weaves together authentication, user management, and MFA, all of which can enhance security, drive engagement, and boost revenues. Visit securityweekly.com/ping identity to learn more. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. And don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand. I saw that Sam was just sharing one that I had completely forgotten about, where I think it was me, Tyler, and Paul doing talking about building a lab, to learn at home, learn security stuff at home. We talked about different kinds of security labs and, what you need to build it, considerations to take into account. It was a lot of fun.
So, Adrian, I have a question about that. Give me the hot take on, is it worth doing a physical lab these days, or do we virtualize everything in the cloud?
For me, I think it's worth having stuff can get expensive real quick in the cloud, especially if you forget that you were running it.
Gotcha.
Like I remember back in the day, I did the CIS benchmark for BlackBerry Enterprise Server. And to run a BlackBerry Enterprise Server, you need Active Directory and you need Exchange. And so I ran all that on one large EC2 instance. And I remember I would do things in it. I would take screenshots and stuff like that, take notes as quick as I could, and shut it back down. Like I'd try and get everything done in an hour, so I didn't have to run it for too long. So, I bought an Intel NUC with 64 gigs of RAM, and I forget how many terabytes of storage, just to set up as a VMware ESX server. And for me, that was worth it. Like you don't need, like back in the day, back in the aughts, I had 2.5 racks in my garage, like old compact gear, and had a SAN and all kinds of crazy stuff. You don't need any of that. Like that one NUC for me, that's I rarely need more than that.
Yeah, the times have changed. I definitely in the late 90s, early 2000s had racks in my tiny little apartment with sun systems on it and all sorts of crazy stuff. And I don't think you have to do that anymore. But anyways, it's neither here nor there. That's a different podcast that we can point people to, a different show. What do we got for our show?
For our show, we have some assurance that funding is okay in IT and security. I think this was, where did I end up putting this? Number 19.
If we just look at the sheer number of funding announcements, it's not going down.
Right. It's right at the end of all the funding and the acquisitions. It's number 19. Battery Ventures says we're okay. Plenty of dry powder. Tech spending is holding steady. Funding is holding steady. I don't think we were that worried. We saw some layoffs. We've got maybe a down round in here, but nothing that's the end of the world. There are 16 fundings.
60 fundings, you said, Bud?
16.
It's interesting because on October 6th, Crunchbase News put out an article, and I'll send it to you so we can link it in there. I just read it this week, but I didn't put it into the show notes. But global VC pullback is dramatic in Q3 2022. So it depends on your vantage point. Like we're talking, 60, 70% decreasing in global VC movement. Now, if we micro that down or focus that down into cyber, maybe it's a different percentage. Just cyber does tend to have resiliency. But I believe, and I'd have to dig up this article as well, I don't know where it is off the top of my head, there was also a cyber article that came out in the last week and a half from Crunchbase that showed a pretty significant decrease in the number of deals and the dollar of deals in the cyber side as well.
Well, it's hard to have hindsight when you're in the middle of it, right? And nobody's really sure how long we're going to be in kind of this downturn. Like a lot of people are saying, 18, 24 months. And if that's the case, we're still in the first quarter of it.
Yeah, it's tough to tell, right? I mean, the market really collapsed in March. In the March timeframe is when the public comps all completely started to collapse down. The high-tech, high-growth comps seem to have bottomed in June, July timeframe, right? We keep bouncing off those bottoms, and actually, that being said, the last couple of weeks we've broke those bottoms, but there is still some downside potential there. But it's how much further can you go when you're 80% compressed off the highs? I mean, really, what we're seeing now, and what makes complete logical sense, is the two massive Vista acquisitions that have occurred this week, right? And I think you've got them in the show notes, correct?
Yep. I've got, you said two Vista. I've got a Vista and a Tomo Bravo.
Yeah, one was Vista, one was Tomo Bravo, right? KnowBe4, and I forget who the other one was off the top of my head.
It was ForgeRock.
ForgeRock, yep. And both of those are multi-billion-dollar acquisitions of publicly traded cyber-related companies. And the reason that happens is that when you're 80% depressed, the private
it's a buyer's market.
Yeah, exactly. The private equity money comes in, does a massive buyout, snaps up the whole thing, waits for the economy to rebound, which is going to happen in 18, 24, 36 months. They hold it, and then they flip it at double the money, right? So when you see that big money making moves, that's when you should be making moves as well. So I think we got to be coming close to the bottom here by the end of the year.
And do you think some of it is also
money moves?
Money moves. That's right.
Money moves. Do you think some of it is also, the cybersecurity market has historically over the last couple of years been pretty bloated. And so this isn't so much of bottoming out in security, other industries, different story, but this isn't so much a bottoming out in security as a shoring up.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's how you spin it, right? I think, when I say bottom out, I'm talking about the publicly traded ones, right, that are hitting new lows on their share dollars, their share prices. When you're talking about shoring up, I think it makes a whole lot of sense for PE to do roll-ups of multiple companies into platforms, right? That's what happens in this stage of the game. General just acquisitions like these two we saw, where they will sit on them for 2 to 3 years and then flip them back out as a new IPO for, $5 or $6 billion compared to a $2.5 or $3 billion acquisition and double their money in 3 to 5 years. That's where we are in the stage of the tech depression right now.
Yep. But, LP funds are still there. We're still seeing VCs raising funds, so, the amounts haven't been insane. Like that's ended. We've stopped, we've had no IPOs. I don't think we've had any security IPOs this year.
Quiet. Yeah, it's gone very
and we haven't had a single unicorn since very early in the year, much earlier in the year. I remember earlier in the year, we were talking about where are unicorns going to be by the end of the year? It's going to be crazy. It's going to be huge. And it just dead stop, came to a dead stop.
Yeah, last year we were flipping up that unicorn graphic that Gus made like every show, multiple times. It was crazy.
We had a unicorn with like 10 we had a decacorn graphic.
We had a decacorn graphic. That's right. That's no longer what we talk about now. Even the publicly traded companies are getting picked up in the 2 to 4 billion range, right? It's like that's not, the concept of the cyber decacorn is definitely shrinking fast.
Yep. Yeah, and even the ones in the high end, it's been a while since they've received their valuations, Tanium and Sneak. Yeah, I think it's Sneak. Earlier, Eric was saying Snick, but I think people know what we're talking about when we say it both ways.
Yeah, and I'm not, you can't really comment specifically on a company by company basis here for what I'm about to say. So I'm not applying this to Snick or Sneak or, whoever. But what we're seeing now in the market is extension rounds so that companies don't have to take down rounds. They're finding somebody who's willing to take extension and apply a bunch of ratchets to it, which will guarantee a certain amount of return or first rights of return. So there's different ways you can structure these deals so that the unicorn still remains a unicorn and doesn't transform back into a horse, right? And so we're seeing some of that occurring. We are seeing some down rounds that are occurring, right? And the smart companies will just accept the pain, take the down round, and figure out how to go up from there again. But that's not easy to do when we're talking about the dollar amounts that we're talking about and the egos of the individuals that we're talking about.
Yeah. It was I forget who the other one was, but there were two this week that were extensions, and I was very confused by it because typically they don't do a press release when they do an extension, because it kind of looks like a down round.
Extension's the new up round, Adrian.
Yeah. So Expel was one of those. They increased their Series E to 171.3 million. I think it was like an extra 30 or something like that. And I've forgotten who the other one was here. But also stuff some convertible notes, debt financing, stuff like that. So we're seeing some non-standard stuff we typically don't see with startups calling themselves unicorns.
Yeah, and those debt financings are gonna dry up too as interest rates continue to increase and the cost of capital increases. The debt financing will decrease as well. So you won't see those. Those are going to be a blip in time that'll go away.
Another 150 basis points or something like that. They're expecting, I think.
Yeah, and that's why we're seeing the markets collapse even further than they have to date.
Yeah, that doesn't make Arctic Wolf any less remarkable, being mostly services firm that's valued as a software firm. I still think that's amazing. And certainly they've got some numbers to back it up. 3,000 customers, 1,100 channel partners, mix of large enterprise to SMBs. It seems like they really caught a comet with that one, especially with all the other MSSPs out there that have been getting consolidated.
It's absolutely shocking to me. The number that's shocking to me actually isn't the 3,000 customers. It's the 1,100 channel partners. If you think about that, literally every seller on the planet that's not a dedicated direct seller for a vendor, every seller on the planet is basically selling Arctic Wolf.
That's all of them.
Everyone sells them.
That's literally the full list. Yeah. Yeah, and Expel. So our number one, number two are both MDR MSSP firms on the list. Because I do order things by size of funding round.
You're so smart.
No, it's more OCD than smart. It's just, it helps me get my bearings, especially when we have 16 fundings.
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if we can go through them all. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, so something I've been trying to do, I didn't get to everything here, but I try and put a note about what category they're in so we can more easily see trends here. Security, number 3 here is data security cloud. Why would you name your startup security?
Yeah, you know what? Probably because, and I have no idea if this is the case, I'm going to guess that they didn't have a marketing person when they named the company.
It's going to be so confusing to market this company. So it's security with an I instead of a Y at the end for folks that are not looking at the notes here. It's
but they've been around for a while, for 3-4 years, I think at least. I think they've been doing pretty well. It's part of that trend where you want something that's familiar but a little catchy. Just if you want to be quote cool, then you just change the spelling of something. But it certainly makes it hard from an SEO perspective and also from a just pure remembrance perspective.
They're sitting at around probably right around 400 employees today, with over 50 employee openings, job openings today.
Wow. Yeah,
it's pretty big.
Yeah, it's pretty big. And it's data security is pretty huge, and it's interesting. Trying to get an idea of what they're doing, but one of the use cases I hadn't noticed as much that I'm starting to notice with data privacy, data security startups is with GDPR. If somebody asks, you got to produce all the data you have on like a single customer. Especially if you're B2C or B2B2C, something like that. I imagine that's not easy at a lot of companies. So that's one of the use cases I'm starting to see here. And there was one particularly, I think it was Data Grail, was the one that really leans hard on that data subject requests. Making
the American Data Privacy Protection Act pretty active right now, and potentially on the horizon. If that passes, it's going to be pretty impactful to organizations, just finding an individual's information across the countless systems that a company has, because right now data handling is pretty out of control at most companies. It's in siloed tools, it's in various places, it's owned by different people, it's secured in different ways. And I once, when I was an analyst, talked to a company, somebody who had worked for a company. They got a data request. It was probably 5 years ago at this point, but he was saying it took them like 6 weeks just to identify all the places where this particular person's data was. And that was one request. So now if the ADPPA becomes a regulation, you're not going to have one request. You're going to have potentially, if US citizens care, you're going to have hundreds or maybe even thousands of requests. And the amount of manual work that will take, it's just not doable. It's not possible to do manually. So there needs to be some sort of automation, which means that somebody needs to build platforms. And I would imagine that, there's some entrepreneurs out there who are already thinking about it, all right, here's the possibility. This bill is moving pretty quickly. It has some opposition, but not huge opposition. It is a bipartisan bill. This is probably coming. And so I imagine there are a lot of companies, but there are companies like this security that have been doing things like that for a little bit. They're on the front edge. We're definitely going to see more as the potential regulation comes to play here in the next year or so. And then it'll be, just like GDPR, it'll be a couple of years before it's actually enacted, which is enough time for people to go out and start building companies.
Yeah, back when I was an analyst, I often said I thought data security would be the last major area that the security market would tackle, just because it's such a pain, because it's so difficult. And this is I think what we're seeing is a specific portion of it. I think still the data that are handled directly by employees are mostly left out in a lot of the data security startups that we're seeing. I haven't seen anybody revisit endpoint DLP or, sharing stuff securely. I think most people are leaning on enterprise file sync and share, like Google Drive and Box and stuff like that to handle that side of it for now. So I think we'll see that revisited. But yeah, maybe this is end times. Where it is the last major category. I think that I mean, everything else is kind of rehashes of existing stuff, right? Like we're seeing people revisit SOAR. We're seeing companies revisit, breach and attack simulation is out now. It's like employee training stuff. So it's number 4, immersive labs.
Endor is redoing SCA, or at least trying to reevaluate how we look at code reuse and securing kind of the entire life cycle of open source code.
Yeah, dependency analysis and all that. Yep.
Which that's an interesting one to me. That Endor Labs one. I know the founder there, Varun Badwar. He is
that's a seed. That's a seed funding, $25 million.
Yeah, that's why I was bringing it up. Right, that's a $25 million seed funding, not an A round. That's a massive seed funding, and it really comes on the back of Varun having founded Cipher Cloud. Then he was early on in Redlock, if he didn't do a founding role there, and then he was GM and SVP of Prisma Cloud at Palo Alto. very well-known dude. And then he connected with 2 PhD technical co-founders to build Endor Labs. So other than the goofy reference to Ewoks, I think it's a pretty cool project, at least from a founder perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a software supply chain. I almost brought that up with Eric. I almost considered tackling 2 of our stories with him because 2 of them are really connect with that previous conversation we just had. Endor Labs, which is number 9, and the other one is way down, number 29, SemGrep Supply Chain. So both very focused on open source, understanding open source dependencies and where the vulnerabilities lie within those.
Yeah, as much as I would have loved to have gotten involved in Endor Labs myself, the name makes me think of Ewoks, and I just put a very cool picture into our Discord about Ewoks. And then the other one that I want to bring up that has the most ridiculous name, and I know nothing about this company, so it could be the best company that ever existed, but Narf Industries, Narf. That would be number 13.
I'm sure they're a lovely company. I know nothing about them, but no, that's terrible.
No. Narf? It seems like something a Muppet would say.
It's very close to Snarf.
It is. Like, I could see the Swedish chef chucking a pot over his shoulder and going, Narf. Like,
wasn't Snarf the little cat-like creature in Thundercats?
Can you believe? Here you go. A little known fact: I've never seen Thundercats in my entire life.
Well,
I don't know I don't know Thundercats, but I know when you snarf something, you eat or drink it quickly and it comes out your nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Yeah. No, that's not the name I want associated with my company. Again, I don't know about this company. I really hope they're a good company, but naming matters.
Yeah. I love their website's very cute. It's security without the snark. Well, and it's funny because the only acronym I ever came up with that I had the nerve, not being Gartner, to come up with when I was at 451 Research was Cloud Application Control was my name for CASB, the name I came up for the CASB space. And then Javad, who lived in the UK, and this is a UK-based company, Narf Industries, was laughing at me because cack means poop in British slang. And,
I'm sorry, is that my computer playing the Narf?
Yeah, you're playing Thundercats or something. I can hear it.
Who?
No, I just went to Narf Industries. Was that their website?
Music on their website?
I just went to Narf Industries, yes, and music started playing. I do apologize for the sound bomb, but that's the Narf Industries
don't
website.
Apologize for that. That's the most amazing, horrible website idea I've ever heard in my life.
It's not making any sound for me. Or maybe I don't have the sound redirected to my headphones.
I do like their website. It looks cool as hell, though.
It does look cool as hell, but security without the snark, and then we just... Okay, it wasn't their website. Gus just confirmed that. Security without the snark, but we brought back the snark, so we are apologizing to you, Narf, for being snarky about your company.
Yeah, no, there's no auto-playing sound on their website?
No, that was Gus. That was totally Gus.
Their website is cool as hell. It's so cool looking. Cool. Like, the design's amazing. And quite frankly, I may make fun of your company name, but listen, it sticks. I'm not going to forget it. Your website's amazing. You got a free shout out on this on this podcast. Like, you're doing something right. Maybe I'm wrong.
It looks like they're kind of like a skunkworks. Like they have a lot of kind of one-off, really interesting one-off projects. So it looks like, they've got to have something more focused if they're raising funding. But yeah, interesting stuff. Just wanted number 4 before we move past that. Just wanted to say I am a big fan of that. Reminds me of Range Force and Recon InfoSec. I think that is a big piece of the glue that we're missing in enterprise security today. Is testing both our people and our products' ability to detect and stop attacks, which is basically what all these companies are doing. Is hey, okay, you've bought all these shiny boxes. You've put your employees through training. Now let's simulate an actual breach, an attacker inside the walls, planning to ransom you or something like that. Let's see how you do.
I'm going to chuck something at you here, Adrian, because I've been having a debate with a founder very recently. We've been, he's a brand new founder. He's ideating his idea. And
he's wrong.
A very close
You're
friend
right.
Of mine. Very close friend of mine. And, I don't want to give away too many details, but his idea is kind of let's call it an application assessment type of thing that exists in cloud native, okay? And it looks at everything that you spin up in the cloud.
Okay.
I was pressing pretty hard saying, well, why don't you flip that on its inverse? And instead of becoming an offensive tool, do the defensive version of that and sit in every workload and figure out ways to do kind of AppSec at that layer. And fundamentally, it feels like every time I hear of an offensive business, okay, some kind of offensive security technology, there's a counterpoint that can be made for a defensive version of it that's a more informed version of that. Take DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing. What is it? It scans applications from the outside. Flip it, turn it into defensive, and it becomes more powerful if you embed it into the application and look at all of the requests that come in and block it and do some kind of RASP.
Did you once work at Signal Sciences? Because I feel like I'm hearing a Signal Sciences pitch right now.
You're not, actually. It has nothing to do with that. But fundamentally, I hear a lot of offensive technologies, and I tend to bristle at offensive technologies, and I'm starting to get the feeling I might be wrong. You said you liked them. This particular founder loves them. Investors that I've been talking to love them. Why are they the better way to do it than, say, flipping the reverse and looking at the defensive version of what you're talking about?
Because the problem isn't with products. It's not a lack of products. It's not a lack of technology. It's that you screwed up the configuration when you set up the products. Your processes don't work. They're fragile. The alerts that you're getting, you're not seeing the correct ones. You're filtering out the wrong ones. You're letting through the wrong ones. It almost, when I analyze every breach, it almost always comes down to process. People a little bit, but almost all the control failures that result in the breach are process. So for example, in the case of Equifax, the main thing that got them, there were 25 control failures that I identified, was that they didn't know how to find a vulnerable Java library in their company. They had a bunch of tools. Those tools could have found it if they knew how to use them to find it, but they just didn't. They didn't know how to find a vulnerable struts jar. And then we saw that again with Log4j. A lot of companies just didn't have the skill set to be able to find a vulnerable Java library in their environment, because you're looking for a single file, or in some cases, a single file within a file within a file, like 2 layers of zip files deep. It's hard to do that. And if you don't practice for that kind of thing, I think the struts case was the perfect practice round for Log4j, but a lot of people didn't take that opportunity to say, hey, we need to be able to, we don't want to be Equifax.
Right.
Let's study their failure and make sure we can quickly identify vulnerable Java libraries in our environment. And like I was mentioning when we were interviewing Eric, some companies did that, and it was obvious who did, because they got back to you real quick and said, here's the state of our product with regards to Log4j, and others really did not.
Yeah, so to take the commentary, which I love, back to the Immersive Labs funding, which is what started this thought process. You're right, I'm a big fan of training defenders in realistic simulations. Really, when we're talking about offensive cybersecurity assessments versus defensive protections for the same attack vectors, there's an added benefit that really should be bundled with the offensive side, and not just saying, look, we do offensive testing to find the vulns, to find out where we can get in, but to continuously test your capability to respond when we are successful as well. And that's where the value really may come from these outside-in type technologies.
The only difference between this and a pen test is every time the pen tester wins, they're going to stop everything, and purple teaming, this is effectively what purple teaming is. They're going to stop everything and say, hey, why didn't you see that? Why didn't you stop me? Let's go fix that.
Yep. See, I learned something every day from you, Adrian.
But yeah, I think it's super important, and it's part of what we did at Savage Security, my services startup, and we would find, in just a couple hours, like you've got huge wins. If you actually ask, okay, what's the root cause of the failure here? And that kind of work made me very pessimistic about MSSPs too, because 100% of the companies that we did this kind of work on, those companies never got a call from their MSSPs, no matter how nasty we got in terms of emulating attacks and things like that.
And that's a massive added
never
bonus.
once.
Instead of just finding what you find, you're actually testing the response capabilities as well.
Yeah, of their MSSP, of their vendors. Yep. All right, let's move on here. Yeah, I don't think any of the other ones here are hugely interesting. Stairwell is kind of a weird one, I think. Malware analysis platform seems very 2012, not very 2022. But I'm imagining they're just gunning for maybe Fortune 100, companies large enough that they actually have somebody dedicated to analyzing malware. But the nice thing about this is Risky Biz, who I guess is a competing podcast, does these product demos now, where they just do a YouTube video, and it's just somebody from the company and Patrick Gray just kind of doing a live demo of the product, and Patrick Gray asking questions as they step through the product, which is pretty. You can learn so much more about the product from a 30-minute video than scouring somebody's website for 2 hours.
Yeah, if you've not had the opportunity to talk to Patrick, I highly recommend you go ahead and look at his podcast. Patrick does amazing stuff over at Risky Biz. I've worked with him 7 years ago to do a bunch of podcast work. Very smart guy, and basically what he's doing is taking briefings on the technologies and asking really intelligent questions into the technology, the market, the use cases, et cetera. And it provides a great way for vendors to actually show their goods off.
Yep. Let's see. Moving on here, I don't have really much to say about the acquisitions here. They're huge private equity take privates. Taking advantages of the drop in valuations in those companies to get a good deal there. And honestly, it seems like it's a good deal for KnowBe4 and ForgeRock. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say there.
Yeah, I have no additional things to add versus what we talked about earlier. It's just fire sale, right? The public markets are so down. It's fire sale time. I would expect more PE acquisitions throughout next year.
Yeah.
Well, as long as it keeps companies and people in business, good companies, good people in business, then it's doing its job.
Yep.
So
we don't want people to lose their jobs. That's for sure.
Yeah. Let's see. So crypto drama, number 20 here.
Crypto's still a thing, Adrian?
It is still. Well, we'll see. I mean, I don't know how many billions of dollars crypto exchanges can lose. I think it's over 2 billion so far this year that we've seen with this one type of attack. What do they call this type of attack? It's like an exchange, something or another. Basically, they're taking advantage of the fact that money has to be moved between different types of crypto. I think cross-chain bridge attacks is what they call them. Over 2 billion stolen this year, and these companies are trying to tell us that, people who use these exchanges, their money's not affected. I just don't buy that these exchanges have enough in reserve to cover these losses.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if they did. I would be absolutely shocked.
Well, further, there's no obligation because there's no regulation on it. So maybe they do, but that's different from the consumer actually getting what they have back. There's a huge difference between, hey, we have the money to do it, and we are doing it.
We saw cases this year with Celsius and Voyager, good examples, where crypto exchange went bust and people tried to pull out all their money and it wasn't there. They didn't have it.
Exactly. So there's a huge chasm between, hey, we have the money to cover it, you're safe, and we are required by law.
Yeah, and I don't think those were rug pulls either. That was just, they didn't expect the market to drop like that. They're hoping all their customers don't try to pull out their funds all at once.
Well, where was the capital? Where was the capital, right? Because the point of a bank, for those of you that listening to the podcast
is to invest it, right?
And general economics, is to loan back out money that they take in, right, to make money, and they get a kind of a reinforcing.
They use money to make money.
Correct, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why they're required by law to have a certain percentage, and that's what a bank run is, right? When there's a bank run or a run on the banks, that means everybody's coming back asking for the money all at the same time, and they have to figure out how to unwind all those loans in a way to get the capital back. My question is, what's happening in the crypto world that's causing that shortage of cash, right? Because every time, ideally, in a basic sense, if I buy a token, I send the money to crypto firm X, they give me said token, they have the money, right? They hold the money. Now, what are they doing? Are they lending that out? Are they using that for leverage? That's the question: is where would the money go such that they were shorted they were too short if and when a bank run or a run on the bank were to occur on them? And I'm not sure where they're not loaning it out. Are they loaning the cash out for actions?
No, they're losing it. They're losing it in attacks. They're covering
my God,
thefts.
That's the worst. They're literally just lighting it on fire. That's the worst part about it.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist anymore. But it was never real money. I mean, not that, the US dollar or any other currency is, quote, real money either. It's all conceptual if you want to get down to it. But there was never any money there.
Well, there was my money.
It's all just playing cards.
No, I put money in there. It took cash out of my bank account. There was real money in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. But if you don't actually touch it.
I think I made $250 in crypto in the last 3 years, so don't tell the IRS.
Wow, that's amazing. Are you going to buy a couple of houses with that?
No, I lost it in the trading market afterwards, so it's fine.
I was going to say that's maybe a round of golf, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's. I think we can call it money. It's just not the most stable form of money or safe form of money at the moment. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. I mean, the economic downturn isn't doing crypto any favors, and neither is falling victim to all these attacks. I mean,
wow.
That's why I wrote, in the intro I said another week, another 500 million stolen. Like it's just it's almost a guarantee at this point. Like since crypto's been a thing, it feels like we've seen 500 million go up in smoke a week.
The question is, though, most of these attacks on the crypto side, I believe, and I think this one you're talking about might be different when you're talking about these bridge attacks, but the original attacks, when money was stolen, it's stolen directly from wallets. It's from the individual person. So
hot
the
wallets,
exchange, the exchange
Yeah.
doesn't get hurt by it. I mean, they do, right? Their reputation gets hurt, but they're not losing the capital that they have in the bank that back the currencies. But this bridge one might be different.
I think it is different because this is, if you're an exchange, you manage many different types of crypto, so there needs to be the ability to move money between forms. So I just from the name here, from what I've read, it sounds like the attack. So I've seen two ways of doing it. Two types of attacks like this that don't take it directly out of customers' accounts. And one, I'm assuming it's taking advantage of the fact that you can move from one type of crypto to another.
Yeah,
and the other one,
you can do it on Coinbase and stuff now too. You can actually trade direct one crypto for another crypto without ever having it hit your cash account.
And the other one, it looked like there was an ability with their APIs to just generate a certain amount of currency, like you're going to move it between them, and they were actually using that to just generate money straight into their wallets.
Wild.
Yeah. All right. So other drama, we've got legal drama here. I don't know a whole lot about the Splunk and Cribl cases, except that it involves executives moving between companies and accusations that intellectual property was stolen. Because Cribl is kind of like a competitor to Splunk, as I understand it. I know a lot of people out there like Cribl. And beyond that, I don't know a whole lot about this, except it sounds like it's probably going to go on for a couple of years.
Yeah,
probably drag out.
Name. I know nothing about the lawsuit whatsoever as well. But the name Cribl just reminds me of that Star Trek episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
I wonder if that's how you say it, if it rhymes with Tribble.
The word Tribbles, that's the correct Star Trek episode, right? Tribbles? Truffles?
Yeah.
Troubles?
No, yeah, you got it.
Okay.
All right, so there's some great reports in here. I'm not going to say too much about them. I've got some comments on the page here. We're running a little long, so I'm looking to where we can spend our last few minutes. I kind of want to talk about the Joe Sullivan case, but I am actively working on getting a panel of CISOs and non-CISOs together to kind of discuss it. So I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on it, but we can talk about it.
We hit it last week while you were out too, Adrian.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it quite a bit, so we can jump it today.
Okay. Yeah, and the main thing there is there's a lot of details that were missed in most of the reporting, most of the discussions I saw. But yeah, we'll have a whole segment just dedicated to that. And let's see. UK is having trouble replacing Gdpr since they're no longer part of the EU. They've got to come up with their own privacy legislation. No big surprise there.
Mm-mm.
And then White House planning labeling system for consumer IoT devices. I assume it's for consumer IoT devices. I also mentioned Germany's already got this. It's voluntary, so not a huge amount of companies have done it. Basically, companies that make broadband routers and have email services are the only ones who have gone through it so far. It's basically supposed to inform you about the security of the product and keep you in touch with the security of the product ongoing. So if something happens that compromises the security of one of these devices, you can get notified. And Carnegie Mellon also came up with a prototype that I think looks pretty good. I think we talked about it maybe like a year ago or something like that. So it'd be interesting to see here in the U.S. If we build on what Carnegie Mellon has already built here for consumer security labels. All right, and the squirrel stories here. It's interesting. We're seeing AI-generated stuff find its way into commercial products. So Bing is you'll be able to AI generate art and imagery and clip art, whatever you want, through Bing itself in the near future. And Microsoft is adding it to its Office suite. So currently in its Office suite, you can just search online libraries for clip art. Now you'll be able to just generate it, which makes a whole lot of sense, except I find it interesting that Microsoft is jumping into it so early when I think the question of, should art generated off of other people's copyrighted works be legal in the first place, it hasn't really been settled or solved, I feel like.
Oh, that derivative art question, that derivative copyright question is such a massive problem. It's been a massive problem in music forever, right? When you hear music that's created today and somebody finds something created like 70 years ago, and they're like, look, it sounds just like this. And sure enough, it does. But did that person even hear the original? Like, there's only a certain amount of chord progressions and chords
with
and notes
12 notes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, come on, how distinct can you be? How far does it go? How far does copyright go? And I think this opens up a whole other can of worms.
It does.
Almost every year we see lawsuits on the music stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there are artists who weren't even born when certain music was released, and that piece of music never made it to mainstream, and then they still get sued, and they have to either pay big fines or share, some of the profits with somebody who never made it big, never did anything. That doesn't mean that people who aren't big names don't have good ideas. That's not even remotely what I'm saying. But the likelihood of, somebody, there was an Ed Sheeran lawsuit not too long ago. Somebody like Ed Sheeran hearing about somebody who was active in the 1950s and 60s who never released an album publicly. And then Sheeran and his team actually stole that music. It's just unlikely. And it's litigious for, just litigation's sake. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and the same thing could absolutely happen here. But what I'm personally more concerned about, because this is clearly about me, is that this says that AI will write professional content for you, so I need a job. So if anybody's hiring, because apparently you don't need humans to do that anymore, so I don't know what I'm going to do. If you have any ideas, let us know.
Yeah, so that's it's a very clean website. Looks like a very cool tool. Like if you go to elfas.app, and it's elf as in elephant, but AS. So ELEPHAS.app. And the little GIF that you see when you go there, the little video, looks pretty impressive. And you do have to have your own OpenAI key. Because it's using OpenAI to do this, but that's.
I don't know. It's $4.99 a month, Adrian. I'm looking at the page, about to click download now, and I'm just too cheap to put in my credit card.
$4.99.
That's a lot cheaper than hiring an actual content wmight, though, Tyler. So you might want to do it.
I'm not going to use this for work. I'm going to use this to write.
I could see them charging $499 a month. $4.99 is a steal, dude.
Well, get the price. Limited lifetime, 77 slots available. Only 77 more slots available. $129 for lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it's only Mac, and but pretty much any active text field, it's like a little utility that sits up in your taskbar that you can access. You just highlight your text, you access it, and it fixes your crappy prose.
I'm
just fixes it for you.
I'm so sad. This is a sad day for people who write. But I wasn't an English major, but this is an even sadder day for English majors because they just get knocked down every step of the way.
Yeah, it's So Tyler, next week we're gonna have to get some feedback from you, or if not a live demo.
You got it. I just purchased it. We're good.
If it works, it could save me a lot of time. I can purchase it, have it write all my stuff. There we go.
It's exactly why I'm buying it. Let's go.
I just don't. I would have bought it already, to be completely honest. Except I don't have a Mac anymore. That's the only reason I haven't.
We got to create an account now.
So sad. Sad.
All right. So before we wrap today, next week we have Martin Resch. We're going to be interviewing next week, founder of SourceFire and Netography. And we've got Edward Wu from Extra Hop. That'll be a fun one, talking about the idea of an MRI for the cloud, talking about how network and packets still exist in the cloud and can still be useful for you. But that's all we've got for today. Thanks so much, Tyler and Katie, for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to everybody watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. We'll see you next week.